All right, what's up, guys? It's been a while since we did one of these backyard fireside chats. We actually did have a fire out here last night. The whole squad was here, not getting lit, but the fire was lit. Anyway, I'm coming off of a marathon PR a few weeks ago. We ran 2:49 down at the Coast Guard Marathon, and a few weeks before that, I ran a 2:55 marathon during training, and both of those efforts were pretty smooth. The marathon was a PR, and it was a slight positive split, meaning we slowed down at the end, but 2 times coming in comfortably under that 3-hour mark. So I wanted to put together a video outlining some of the things that I did in the past year and a half leading up to the past few weeks that helped me break through that 3-hour mark 2 times. So if you're out there and you've been wondering how you can crack 3 hours, or you've taken a few cracks at a 3-hour marathon, you haven't gotten it, I'm hoping that my experience here, and disclaimer, this is just my experience, this is just what's worked for me, but I'm hoping that my experience here can give you some insight into what you might be able to incorporate into your training to either go sub 3 or to get your next PR. So with that, let's get into it. Alright guys, so first up here, no surprise if you've watched this channel, the number one thing that I did to improve my marathon time and to crack 3 hours is mileage. So this last training block was not my first time training for a marathon. I actually trained for a marathon back in 2022, the Charlotte Marathon, and I came in at 3 hours and 19 minutes. And with it being my first marathon, I did want to go sub 3, as a lot of us do who are young males with athletic backgrounds and ambitious goals. I thought that I could take sub 3 my first go around. I'd run 1:20 something in the half, but the full was just a completely different beast for me, and my fitness did not convert. I also had some injuries, etc., etc. But during that marathon training block, I was clipping off around 40 to 50 miles per week, which I think for most standard conventional training plans, and I always say if you follow the conventional wisdom, you'll get conventional results, but most conventional training plans for a first-time marathoner, regardless of background, athletic experience, or ambition, will have you topping out around 40 to 60 miles per week. And whether that was the right decision for me at the time or not, I'm not sure, but it did not get me into the long running, long distance fitness level that I needed to be to break 3 hours. And so over the past 18 months leading up to this second marathon training build, the Coast Guard Marathon block the past year, I put a huge emphasis on increasing weekly mileage. First, I built up to 80 miles per week and then 100 miles per week. So ignoring the number 80 or 100, the building block of a higher mileage marathon training style is 10 to 12 mile runs every morning. And so if you're currently running 40 to 50 miles per week and you want to go sub 3 and you want to increase your long run fitness, that means getting up to that 10 to 12 mile mark versus 4 to 6 to 8 every morning. That's what's worked for me, and I was running most of that mileage around not super fast. If you're wanting to go sub 3, you can comfortably run 8-minute miles, or you should comfortably be able to run 8-minute or 8:30 miles. So I was running most of these runs around 7:30 to 8:30 pace, but consistent for almost a year and a half every morning, doing 10 milers to 12 miles. You can check my Strava to see this, but that's the building block of this training. And if you're having trouble cracking that, that's the number one thing I would start to do. Make sure you're running at least an hour most days out of the week in the morning, if not 90 minutes, which is going to get you up to that 12-mile mark. And then second thing in this mileage is, on top of that, doing double days. Once you've mastered the hour, or not mastered, but once you've comfortably been able to do the hour to 90-minute runs at that 7:30 to 8:30 pace for about 3 months to 6 months, then layering on some double days. I started off just doing 4-mile doubles in the afternoon. I started doubles pretty early on. I would do 30-minute runs in the morning and then 30-minute runs in the afternoon, just to get my body used to running 2 times a day or working out 2 times a day. And if you're already doing strength work or playing basketball or some sort of other workout on top of the running, it's not going to be a huge adjustment for you to do double days. And when I say you, I know I'm saying you, but I really want to be talking about my experience here. But I think most of this will apply if you're also a young male aged 20 to 40 who's coming from a decently athletic background. Most of these insights you'll be able to apply, because there's nothing special about my background here. I've just committed to running a lot of miles. So that's the first thing, mileage. Second, the long run. Now, one of the big parts of increasing mileage, and one of the benefits is it makes it easier for us to run longer distances. I personally felt like I was recovering quicker between runs. It sounds counterintuitive and ironic, but the more that I ran, the quicker I was recovering because my body was just accustomed to running that much. And so on top of the weekly mileage, on top of those 10 to 12 mile runs during the morning, I gradually increased my long run distance from about 2 hours or 16 miles consistently to 20 to 22 miles consistently. And so if you are not, and this is year round, if you're not year round already doing a 16-mile long run, if you're doing 10-mile long runs on the weekend and you're having trouble cracking that sub-3 mark, I would bump it up to 16, do 16-mile long runs. And this is what worked for me, 16-mile long runs consistently for 3 to 4 months. And then maybe do a goal half marathon race after that build, and then amping it up to 20 to 22. And that's what really worked for me. Once I was consistently able to hit 20 to 22 mile long runs every weekend, again, at that 7:30 to 8:30 pace. I didn't start off doing this with any crazy workouts, throwing marathon pace or threshold pace, but being able to be consistent with it for a few months, for a set period of time, no matter how you're feeling, getting out there and hitting a long run. And I have never missed a long run. I had COVID last summer and I still hit my 16-mile long run. So being able to be consistent with it, and you might not need to be that extreme as I am, but being able to be consistent with it, that's going to be huge. And getting past that 2-hour mark every weekend is going to build a ton of fitness, because that's the weak point for many of us out there. We can hold 650 pace for 18 miles or for 20 miles, and then the last 6 just comes and crushes us. But if you're running 22s every weekend, even at an 8:15 pace, it's going to make the last 6 a little bit easier, because your body is accustomed to being out there for 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And so this does come with more of an injury risk, but for me, I mitigated a little bit of that risk by taking my time to build up to this distance and doing those consistent 16 milers before I jumped into doing the 20 and 22 milers. And so again, conventional wisdom is going to get you conventional results. I don't have one of those USATF training certifications or an RRCA training certification. I've actually been considering getting one of those just so that I have one and no one says I don't. But this is what worked for me in my experience running 2 sub-3 marathons within a month of each other, big mileage and long runs. That's going to do the trick. And it might be a little bit like, as I like to say, bringing a machine gun to kill an ant. But for those of us who are hobby joggers and do not have a lot of years under our belt running big mileage, being consistent with the bigger mileage and the longer long runs can pull forward some of the gains that might take us some more years to get. And so it is a little bit of a risk-reward analysis that you're going to have to make. How injury prone are you? And that is something that I want to say as well. I am not very injury prone. I've only been injured really once in my 20 plus years of doing sports and running and lacrosse and basketball. And that was during the Charlotte Marathon training block. And so I can tolerate a big workload. Some of these insights that I'm giving you, you might have to adjust based on how you're feeling. And so if you know you're more injury prone, I wouldn't jump into doing 22-mile long runs right away. I would ease up into it. And if you're feeling things pop up here and there, you're going to have to make the call on whether you want to give it a go or pull back and take a rest day. And I train 100% by feel. Today I actually took an accidental rest day because I didn't feel like getting up and going to the gym and doing my hour-long run in the morning. And I'm 2 weeks off the marathon. Next week we're going to hit 100 miles a week again, but this week that wasn't in the cards. I didn't need to do that. And so that's going to be a piece of this too. You're going to have to figure out what works for you. If you've been following the book, trying to crack sub-3 for a few years or a few training blocks and it's not working, I think pushing with some of these a little bit more extreme tactics might be able to help you do the trick. And so last thing, this is a running shoe channel primarily. I talk a lot about the shoes, so I did want to mention the one type of shoe that has been the most helpful in my sub-3 marathon training, and that is the Max cushion shoe. So right here, this is the New Balance 1080 V13. There's nothing special about this shoe versus other Max. Well, there is something special about the shoe, and I actually really like the shoe versus other Max cushion shoes, but I brought it out here more so to talk about the category in general. And so as we're doing bigger mileage, as we're putting our body under more stress, and strain. I personally love to have the most amount of protection, comfort, and cushion possible so that I'm a little bit more confident that I'm doing the best that I can to reduce injury risk versus going out there in an old pair of worn down, low stack shoes that might make me feel the impact a little bit more. And so I'm 6'2", 160 pounds. I've felt in the past that some shoes weren't the most supportive for me. So these max cushion shoes do a really good job keeping me feeling protected. This is my favorite one here. Again, New Balance 1080 V13. It is super soft, super cushioned. I put 300 miles on this over the past year. It is my go-to shoe for any day where I just wanted comfort. And with the style of training that I've been talking about, getting out there, running big mileages, running longer long runs, there wasn't a huge emphasis on me for speed. And so I wasn't going for shoes that would make me feel super fast all the time. I was going for shoes that felt comfortable, and this is one of the most comfortable shoes out there. And there is a place in the rotation for race day shoes, those carbon fiber plated beasts. And if you go look at my channel, we talk about the race day shoes a ton. I run in race day shoes probably 3 to 4 days a week. I probably run in race day shoes more than any other running shoe YouTuber out there. But with that being said, that is not the piece of equipment, that is not the tool that enabled me to improve my fitness or that I use to support my training style the most. Those shoes make us feel fast, and some of them are similar to max cushion shoes in that they have big tall stacks of foam and are decently stable. But these shoes here, the non-plated ones that are more comfort oriented, are what I gravitated towards when I was building up my mileage, not focusing on hammering workouts, not focusing on setting a 5K PR every Monday, but focusing on how can I recover, how can I make sure I'm feeling good when I'm going out there so that the next run, the next long run, I could run that in a quality way. And so going for these types of shoes as we're building is awesome. And then once we're doing those 20 to 22 mile long runs consistently, that's when I would layer in some marathon race pace into there. And that is something I wanted to mention with the long runs. I would do 16 miles of marathon pace within a long run. And that's what helped me crack that sub 250. I'm not sure if it's exactly necessary to go sub 3, but maybe doing 16 miles at a 7:10 pace or a 7 flat pace during a long run could be helpful, because I was doing this at probably around a 6:30 pace. I would do a 22 miler with 16 miles in there. And it is a little bit more of an advanced training style. I took it from the Daniels method, but doing more during training, overly preparing during training for the stress of those last 6 miles of the race, that's what helped me when I had a tough time and rough patch in my last race from miles probably 17 to 20. That's what helped me drop the hammer for the last few miles, get back to that goal race pace. And I went even sub 6 on the 26th mile of that race. And if you look at a lot of people's splits from the Boston Marathon recently, which is a totally different beast, but a lot of folks got burnt on that last little stretch there. And there's no 100% insurance policy that we could buy for not blowing up in the back half of a race, but doing these longer runs with some race pace in them and with some fast finishes once we've consistently built up our mileage, that is something that can help make the last little bit of a race easier. And for my marathon time trial that I did, I actually did a negative split as well. So I just did 26 miles around the neighborhood, came in at 2:55, but sped up to about a 6:30 pace at the end. And I was able to do that because I was doing those consistent 22 milers with some race pace in there. So those are the 3 things that have helped me: building mileage, long runs, baby. You got to make those long runs 2.5 hours. If you're having trouble breaking that 3-hour mark, that's the number one thing I would recommend, other than mileage. And then third, picking the right shoe to be comfortable. Not always about the race day shoes. It's about something that's going to help us get out there and want to run because we're feeling good and the shoe is supporting us. So this is going to be a short and sweet one. Please drop any questions below on my training. Again, this is what's worked for me, slamming mileage, not about a ton of speed workouts. The last thing I'll say actually is I did go sub 120 in the half marathon before I did sub 3 in the marathon. So that's also something you could try to do. That will improve your lower end speed. And then once you go back to the marathon, that'll make that 650 pace or 640 pace feel a little bit easier once you're comfortable running 6 flat pace for 10 plus miles. So that's the last thing I'll say. I will link my 120 half marathon, some of the training videos I did on that, below. Please ask any questions. I like doing these training videos sometimes, these fireside chats. So if you want to see more of these and have any questions about my training or other tactics I've used to break 3 hours or 250, let me know. As always, guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another video, and I appreciate you watching. All right, guys, one more thing. Welcome back to another episode of One More Thing. Today, we're actually going to get two more things. So these kind of fall under the same category, and I wanted to make sure I got them in here before the end of the video. One is strength work, the other is nutrition. So I have a lot of people asking me, especially recently, how much strength work do I do? What is it? What's my gym regimen? And the nutrition thing falls under the same category because Sub-3 is a performance goal, not necessarily a health goal. And so everything that I did to run a faster marathon was about how do I increase my performance? And so I focused a lot on being able to recover quickly to run as many miles as possible. And doing more strength work or doing strength work at all is going to reduce the recovery. It's going to make it harder for us to recover and get out there and run. And so if you're already doing a lot of strength work and your body is accustomed to it, I would say do what works for you, but I would prioritize, if you're having a hard time cracking that 3-hour mark, running more miles, and then we can get back to that strength work. But you got to find what works for you, getting you to be able to consistently run 10 to 12 miles per week. If you have certain weaknesses, it might make sense for you to do more strength work. But for me personally, because I am not very injury prone, I found that dropping the gym altogether and slamming mileage was what really got me to make those big breakthroughs, and not doing a ton of traditional gym work, but hill running with the stroller up and down the hill with my son in there. That was one of the things that I did do to strengthen the legs. And so that's not to say we should just be running easy miles, 10 miles easy on the treadmill every morning. We should do some sort of resistance work if possible, hill running, making sure we're running outside, not just on the flat. But I don't think it's a 100% necessity to crack 3 hours to be getting in the gym. And there's an opportunity cost. If you're watching this channel, you're likely a hobby jogger like me, and so it's going to take more time. And for most of us, getting more mileage is going to be a better benefit than doing gym work. And then for the nutrition piece, what worked for me is eating a lot and underfueling. This is what I discovered during the 2022 Charlotte Marathon training block. Underfueling was my number one enemy, so not getting enough food. So I just made sure in 2023 and earlier this year, was that when I was training for the Coast Guard Marathon, to make sure I was always eating as much as I needed to, and maybe even a little bit more. When you're running 80, 90, 100 miles per week, it's pretty hard to be overeating. And so I would eat to satisfy my hunger. And then also I'd make sure I was topping up my carb stores. Every night I would have granola, cereal, or some other sweet or baked good lying around. Again, is that the best thing for health, to not be doing 12-hour fasts every night? Probably not. That's research shows that intermittent fasting is great, and I did intermittent fasting for a long time. But when we're thinking about a performance goal, the best thing we can do for running is making sure we're always fueled up. We have a lot of carbs in our system. Sometimes if we're busy, dads, moms, we don't have a lot of time to cook. Sometimes it's going to come from processed food, and that's okay. I always thought to myself, calories are king. And so I made sure to get enough calories to be fueled up for those long runs. And I had a lot of solid long runs because I took that approach. And so as I progress in my running career and my wellness journey in general, we're probably going to switch it up. Maybe we'll go more whole foods. But as a busy hobby jogger, that's what worked for me. Number one thing is don't get injured. And so going for some calories and dropping the strength work during periods of high mileage are the things that work for me. Okay, I said short but sweet, and then I added on a 3-more-minute episode of One More Thing. I think this is it. Time to rip the SD card out of the camera. I'm just fired up because I want to help some people go Sub-3. So please drop your questions below. I love you guys. See you tomorrow.